Hello everyone and welcome back to Towergate. It is Towergate day number 508. 508. Tuesday, July the 31st, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, let's go ahead and get started. A lot to talk about today. Well, we're learning that John Carlin, I'm sure most of you are familiar with John Carlin. He was the former head of the Department of Justice, NSD Division. He is the one who enabled the FBI's Carter Page FISA warrant. If you remember what happened, he signs off. He's the final sign-off on the Carter Page FISA warrant. The final sign-off on the Carter Page FISA warrant that goes to the FISA court, and at which point we understand the first time that FISA warrant was rejected by the FISA court. Then, of course, he leaves. He goes into the private sector. Well, we're learning that John Carlin was formerly served as the chief of staff to former FBI director Robert Mueller, Uncle Bob the Executioner. That's right, John Carlin, former head of the DOJ NSD, was the former chief of staff to Uncle Bob the Executioner. Man, oh man. You know, there's just too many connections here. I mean, yes, it could be a series of coincidences. Coincidences do happen. It is possible. I mean, we know that Rodenstein and Comey and apparently Mr. Carlin and Mueller all worked through the FBI, the DOJ. They're bouncing back and forth throughout their careers. It's very likely they all crossed paths, certainly knew each other, okay? So we can say all that, but it's just, in this particular issue, as we dive deeper into it, and the more and more we learn, the more and more it looks like we didn't just have a bunch of, coincidental things happening all at once. It's appearing more and more like there was serious coordination, which makes this conspiracy even more complex and more thought out, and tells us that the origins of it began long before we even suspect. This stuff probably was late 2015, maybe earlier than that. It's really hard to say. But let's take a look at these connections here. We have Comey, who gets fired in May. We're told that on the flight, because he goes out to California, he's told when he gets out to California to give a speech that he's been fired. So he gets on the plane, he's coming back, and we're told that on the flight back home that he calls Uncle Bob the Executioner, Bob Mueller. That's never been proven, but certainly when he comes before Congress, hopefully someone will ask him that question, whether or not he contacted Uncle Bob on the flight back or any time during that week, from the time he was fired to a week later when Mueller was appointed. We need to know if there was any communication. In fact, they should subpoena the communications of both Uncle Bob and Comey to find out if they had any conversations. Now, when you look at it, you have Carlin, who signs off on the FISA warrant, which would eventually become, I guess, the investigation that Mueller would inherit after Comey is fired. And of course, who steps in after Comey is fired? Rodenstein. And probably on the advice of people around Trump, say, okay, well, you just fired Comey, so we need new people here at the DOJ. You got Sessions as your AG. So the next man up is this guy from Virginia, Rodenstein. He's kind of like the next man in seniority, the next man up. So that's the guy that you should put up. It's his turn. Trump doesn't know who the hell Rodenstein is. He assumes he's being given good advice. Okay, I guess he's the next guy up. Hopefully he's a good guy. Has no idea he was involved with Mueller and Comey involved in the Uranium One deal. So he ends up getting Rodenstein. And then we can see the connection between Rodenstein and Comey and Mueller and now John Carlin. John Carlin conveniently located over there at the DOJ NSD, which is where at least the first FISA warrant, and probably all of them, as a matter of fact, really came from. So it's just very, very curious. And of course, we know John Carlin, this first FISA warrant, which goes to the next question, which is somebody asked in the comment section about the first FISA warrant. And there's a rumor that there were 2 FISA warrants before the 4 that were approved. There was 2 that were, rejected. It's hard to really find the evidence of the second one, but we know for a fact that there was a FISA warrant that was rejected in June. That FISA warrant, of course, also came through the DOJ NSD, and that would have been John Carlin. So John Carlin obviously went to the FISA court as the top guy, the last set of eyes, the last person to approve before it goes to the FISA court from the DOJ NSD would have been Carlin. So he would have signed off on it. It goes to the FISA court. That one gets rejected. That one was in June. Keep in mind, in June is before the FBI even met the first time with Christopher Steele in Rome, Italy. It's before all the stuff's even going down. It's before the Trump Tower meeting. The only thing that was really going on that early would have been the Papadopoulos stuff and the informant trying to penetrate Papadopoulos, trying to penetrate Michael Caputo, trying to penetrate Roger Stone. But of course, as we can see from the FISA application release, none of those 3 individuals are ever mentioned in this FISA request. Now, we haven't seen the one that was rejected. We haven't seen that one, but we can assume that it was Carter Page that they were trying to get the first one on. We have no evidence at this point to suspect that that it was Stone or Caputo or Papadopoulos who were the reason who were the targets of the first FISA warrant, because none of them took the bait. They all 3 spit the bit. Papadopoulos was supposed to disclose to Downer that he got this information from Mr. Mifsud about Russians having dirt on Hillary, but he froze up or caught on to what was going on, or for whatever reason, Papadopoulos got nervous. He didn't come off the information, and that blew that up. Okay, so they had nothing there that would have passed the sniff test to get the FISA warrant. Caputo and Stone both rejected that informant's offer. So none of that could have been used. It had to be Flynn or Carter Page, and it's hard to imagine them going after a FISA on the number. Let's see, what was Flynn's position at that time? He was national security, head military guy at national security. It's hard to national security advisor, or preparing to become national security advisor, still in the military at that time, in intelligence. Hard to believe they'd be getting a FISA warrant on him. That doesn't make any sense. So it almost had to be Carter Page. So it appears that the first, this is a fact, the first FISA warrant was applied for in June of 2016. It was rejected. We can assume at this point it had to be Carter Page that they were going after. But it was rejected, and it had to be Mr. Carlin who went after that. So, what information would have been used? As we know from Devin Nunes, they have no official intelligence from the Five Eyes. So we know it wasn't official intelligence. There is none. Maybe that's why it was rejected. So what kind of intelligence could it have been? Well, it would have had to have been unofficial intelligence. And it must have been wild speculation. Probably this information that came from Brennan. Because remember, as far as we know, the FBI is not involved yet. They haven't been contacted yet. Steele didn't meet with the FBI in Rome until July. Here they're going for a warrant in June, which means it had to be information that they were building up over a period of time before that. And the only person really, or the only entities really, that were conducting intelligence work that was excavating the name Carter Page would have been the CIA and the people, British intelligence. Mr. Halper, British intelligence, and the CIA. So this information almost certainly had to come from Brennan. It had to be Brennan probably getting information from British intelligence. He took that to the DOJ, NSD, Carlin, would have been the last man who would have put his stamp of approval on it, and they put it to the FISA court, and it was rejected. This is almost the only thing that could have happened that I can think of. Maybe there's something else. But this is apparently, for whoever that was that asked me the question about the FISA warrant, the first one was rejected. It was requested in June. It was requested from the DOJ NSD, as all of them were, I understand. And, of course, the only person or entities that could have been supplying information that could have been in that FISA warrant could have only been the CIA and the British intelligence, because the FBI hadn't even met with Steele at that point, weren't even aware of the dossier or even the first memo at that point, unless it was being fed to them by Brennan. Peter's been Strokinus might have known about it, people in the 6-agency task force, but it appears that it would have to have gone through Brennan to the DOJ NSD, which would have been John Carlin, who we now know served as chief of staff to Robert Mueller. My oh my. Okay, so now kind of staying somewhat with this topic, something else that we talk about here, which is still unfortunately not talked about enough in the corporate media. You hear DeGeneva talk about it, Sidney Powell talks about it, a couple other people talk about it, but Hannity, you don't hear him, Ingram, Tucker Carlson, no one else, not even Greg Jarrett really, talking about this, what we've all known for a long time, which is about the private contractors who were accessing the NSA database through the FBI systems as early as November of 2015. But as we get more and more information and we begin to look at the situation with the DNC, and we now know that the DNC is going to have to provide information to Mr. Gubarev's attorneys, and we know how hard they fought that. Spent the past year fighting that. BuzzFeed tried to get that, and the judge rejected it. But when Gubarev's attorneys request it, they get it, because it's different circumstances. But I want to drill down just a bit here on something that is another thing that we might learn as we get deeper and deeper into this. We know from the Judge Collier's 99-page FISA court document that there were multiple contractors accessing the NSA database via the FBI as early as November of 2015. She says contractors. We are almost sure that one of those was Confusion GPS. It's been speculated that maybe James Comey's friend was one of those people, and it's been suggested that possibly CrowdStrike was one of those people who may have been getting access to the NSA database doing these queries. Rogers discovers this, says, uh-oh, this can't be going on. He has his auditor do an audit of all 702 queries. They determine that 85% are illegal. Rogers takes this information, gives it to the FISA court judge, Collier, who's head of the FISA court. She does her internal review, puts out the report. So, we also know that when the DNC claimed they were hacked, and there was things going on, not just once, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. There was stuff going on all through the early spring of 2016 with the DNC and their servers. Okay, various things going on in terms of people trying to access their system or hacking or whatever. So we know that the FBI and Department of Homeland Security both made multiple attempts to get a look at that DNC server, but the DNC would not allow them. And it wasn't just like it was they made it sound like DNC makes it like, oh, they gave us a call and we said, nah, thanks, we can handle it, we got our own people. It wasn't like that at all. There were multiple attempts made by the FBI from multiple offices. The local office there where the DNC is, the main office in D.C. We know the Department of Homeland Security contacted them several times. It tried to. There was pressure on them. They were trying to, please, look at those, what's the problem? I mean, why wouldn't you want us to look at we can help you out. We can write a patch program. We can see what's going on. The DNC, not only that, we know that the FBI local field office actually sent technicians there. They actually brought the technician van there. They had the equipment they needed. They could have copied that server on site and never even taken the server. They made every accommodation possible to the DNC to get the contents of that server without even having to remove it. They made every possible effort, as did the DHS. We know that from the testimony of Jay, what's his name? And he said, yeah, they were frustrated. It wasn't like a lighthearted moment. It was a frustrating moment for the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, who were both really wanting to get a look at it, and the DNC was emphatic about the fact that they not get anywhere near that server. They actually would not even let the FBI agents who came there even go into where the server was. They wouldn't even let him in. They kicked him out of the building, basically. Said, no thanks. We didn't ask for you to be here. You have no warrant or anything like that to take our servers. Leave. So they didn't treat the FBI very well at all. Wouldn't let them even look at the server. They did not want the FBI or the DHS looking at their server. Why? It had just been hacked. Apparently they had been multiple hacks. Now the reason that they give is because they said they were in the middle of a presidential campaign and they didn't want to have, problems, having things going on, lose their server during the middle of a presidential campaign, that they would deal with it later. That's bullshit, okay? So everybody knows it's bullshit, okay? But it's what they say. Everybody knows it's bullshit, okay? So if you look closer at this and you begin to see how much the State Department and people from the State Department and the people from the DNC, how much of a role they had much earlier than we ever thought in putting together the dossier, their communications with Steele, their associations with what was going on with the Ukrainian people and what they were learning, and bring it back to the DNC, their association with McCain, setting up this group, Ms. Chalupa, Trump-Russia collusion, John Brennan doing his thing, working with British intelligence, the whole nine yards. You got Christopher Steele doing all the work for the State Department on the Ukraine issue. When you look at all these things and you tie it all together, you begin to ask the question, and it's just the obvious place that you go at this point. Is it possible? Is it possible? We know that Confusion GPS was accessing that database for sure. Probably CrowdStrike, who was the ones who were brought in to look at the DNC server. Wouldn't let the FBI. No. They used their own people, CrowdStrike. So we know we got Fusion GPS, and Fusion GPS is doing this back in November 2015, probably CrowdStrike as well. Now this was before the guy from the Washington Free Beacon, the Republican, had ever begun paying Fusion GPS. Long before Hillary Clinton or the Democrats were on paper, legally, paying Confusion GPS. So we had Confusion GPS for 4 or 5 months, beginning at the end of 2015, accessing the NSA database through the FBI. Maybe CrowdStrike was doing that as well. Who were they working for? Why were they given this access? Well, the logical point to go to there would be the CIA, because Confusion GPS is very closely connected to the CIA. The people over at CrowdStrike are very closely connected to FBI counterintelligence, because that's where the number 2 man at CrowdStrike is a former FBI forensic analyst and high-ranking intelligence guy from the FBI. And of course you have Mr. Alperovich. So, when you look at all these things, and you look at the behavior of the Democratic National Committee, I think it's perfectly logical to ask, because we are told there were multiple contractors accessing the NSA database, and now that we can see how early the State Department, the DNC, and all these people were involved in setting up this Trump-Russia collusion, this whole thing, I don't think it's too far a stretch to ask the question if it's possible that the Democratic National Committee was one of the entities that had been granted access to that NSA database via the FBI. Was the DNC one of the entities that was accessing the NSA database illegally, right along with Confusion GPS and probably CrowdStrike? then it would make sense, because it doesn't without the DNC. What was Confusion GPS and CrowdStrike doing back in November of 2015 if they were accessing the NSA database? What were they doing? Who were they working for? Fusion GPS hadn't begun working for Mr. Singer at that time, the Republican. He certainly hadn't begun working for the DNC. We're told that didn't occur until after Trump won the nomination. That would have been in, late May, early June 2016. This was happening in November of 2015. November 2015, private contractors accessing the NSA database. We're almost sure one of them was Confusion GPS. Confusion GPS was not working for the Republicans or the Democrats yet. They're listed on the CIA website as a CIA contractor. Who gave permission for Fusion GPS to have that access? And what were they doing with it? If they were working for a government agency, then they would have to produce that information and give it to a government agency. But why would a government agency who holds the information need to have Fusion GPS or a third-party contractor get it to give it back to them? They wouldn't. The only reason that there would be for Confusion GPS or CrowdStrike or anyone else, a private contractor, to get the information is if the information was to go to someone private, outside the government. And who would that have been? Who would that have been? Was it Mr. Singer? He had no idea Trump was even going to be a factor at that point, nor did the Democrats. This is November 2015. May have had something to do with, it's even before the 6-agency task force. It's really before even, Brennan really got deeply involved with the FBI. Now, there was communications going on between British intelligence and CIA at that time about that information coming from Mr. Halper, about Carter Page, Michael Flynn. But this was all stuff that was used to put together the dossier. We know about the close relationship between Hillary Clinton, the Clintons, and the Simpsons. Simpson and his wife, Mary Jacoby. We know about the close relationship with John Brennan. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked here, my friends. Because they're putting all this stuff together with the Trump-Russia collusion based on this information that was coming from Chalupa, from the Ukrainian stuff they were digging up in Ukraine, where Kramer, McCain's right-hand man, was working. It was in late 2015 or late 2016 that McCain, of course, was in Nova Scotia with Kramer. Mr. Akhmetian was there. I mean, there's just too many coincidental players going on in all this for it to all be coincidental. And we still have no explanation for why these private contractors, we know they were doing it. What we don't know is exactly who were these private contractors and why. Who were they working for? Who would have this kind of control? Who would have this kind of power? Who would have this kind of access? Who would have the ability to make this kind of thing happen and then keep it quiet? There's not many people who could arrange for this activity to be going on. There's only really 2 or 3 people who really could have allowed this to happen, to go on, and then to be, silenced or hidden or not revealed, however you want to look at it. And that would be the president, Obama, maybe Brennan doing secret CIA stuff, or the rotten Reverend Clinton running it through the State Department, using her friends Simpson and Jacoby, Confusion GPS. One of those 3, the 3 heads that I mentioned in the previous video. Almost everything that we look at here had to either go through Clinton, Obama, had to go through Clinton or Brennan, and had to be known by and approved by, okayed by Obama. This stuff doesn't happen without the president knowing about it. No way. No way. And who would have the entrenched power and connections to make this stuff happen? Not many people. Not many people. Clinton, the CIA director. That's it. Obama, Clinton, and Brennan. We need to find out who those people were And this is known. It's known. Judge Collier and Mike Rogers should be able to tell us. The NSA should be able to tell us. The guy who did the audit should be able to tell us. Call the auditor who did the audit for Mike Rogers. Who were the people, who were the entities who were accessing that NSA database through the FBI systems? Who were they? Was one of them the Democratic National Committee? It's a question that needs to be asked, because they're looking awfully suspicious now. Too many things are not adding up in this regard. We need to get to the bottom of that. Trump is threatening a government shutdown to get his border wall. Very good politics. Normally, terrible politics. Any other time in my life, I would have said, as a political analyst, I would have said, no, never do it. Never do a government shutdown 3 months before an election when you're only 25 seats away from losing control of the House of Representatives. No, no, that's like no-go zone. Don't do it. Too many potential blowback, too much potential blowback, too many bad things can happen. You can turn your own people against you. You certainly will turn a lot of Republicans against you. Not a good move. But in this particular case, with this particular president, it's probably a good move. Think about it from Trump's position. We know the Democrats, all the Democrats, and most Republicans really do not want a border wall. We certainly know it doesn't benefit Twitch McConnell or Paul Big Ears Eddie Munster Ryan. They don't benefit personally. In fact, just the opposite. They don't want it. So Twitch McConnell saying, nah, along with Ryan, we're not going to have the money for additional wall funding in the bill until after the midterms. Trump saying bullshit. He doesn't care if he offends Ryan. He's leaving. He doesn't care if he offends Twitch. He's a hell of a lot more popular than Twitch is. And he can steamroll him because Trump's got like 90% approval with his base and McConnell's got like 5% approval with his base. So Trump is operating from a position of power. He understands he's much more powerful than they are. He also knows that this issue across the country, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, or independents, just when you poll registered voters, the polls have been out there for weeks and weeks, it's over 60%. Over 60% of people polled, Republican, Democrat, Independent, believe we need to secure the border and have some border policy. We can't have wide open borders. This is a winner. It's a winner at the ballot box. It's a winner issue for Trump. For the Republicans, for the ones who care, of course, many of the rest of them don't. But it's a winning issue, and it's a ballsy move. I will say that. It's a roll of the dice. That's for sure. Trump's a gambler, but it's not a losing bet he's placing. Trump's placing a bet that has a very better likelihood of winning than losing. Whenever your party shuts down the government, it usually has a very negative, and you would never do it 3 months out from an election. And Trump's talking about doing it a month out from the election. So, that's hardball. But, he believes in, number one, believes in himself. He obviously believes and knows his voters love him. The base loves him. And he knows that it's popular across the country. And he also knows that people, regardless of who you are, you like to see someone fight for what they believe in and not back down. It makes him look strong. It makes his opponents look weak. It's a very, very good political move. Risky, may cost him some seats. It may cost the Republicans the House. But I think as long as he holds on to the Senate, he really doesn't care that much. I mean, what's he getting out of Paul Ryan? Even if the Democrats took over by 3 or 4 seats, he's still going to be better off in the House after the election, even if he loses the House. Because even though they won't head up the committees, they'll have more pro-Trump Republicans after the midterms than they have now, regardless of who controls the House. Which means they can stop things from happening in the House that they don't like and move things ahead that they can. And the Senate is where his strength will be. So it's a very, very good political move for Trump. For the party, for members of the Republicans trying to hold on to the House, a little trickier. But he's using the power he has and the popularity that he has with his base and the fact that it's a winning issue. and he doesn't care about Twitch. Screw Twitch. And Ryan's leaving, so who cares what Ryan thinks about it? So it's a very good move. I support it 100%. Threaten to shut. It won't happen, but go ahead and threaten. They'll cave. Schumer will cave. They'll all cave. You don't want to be the Democrats on the other side. That's what position Trump's put them in. Trump's saying, okay, I'm going to force a government shutdown. Chucky, if you and Nancy want to be caught up in this government shutdown, and I'm going to make it, I got the bully pulpit, I'm going to make it all about this, my wall, which is the immigration issue, and you can go ahead and take a stand 30 days before the election that you're willing to shut down the government to stop me from securing the border, which is my job, to enforce the law to secure the border. So he's kind of making Schumer and Pelosi take the unpopular side of an issue that's right now the number 2 issue in the country, where the polls side with him over Pelosi and Schumer. It's a really good tactical move. It's just ballsy as all hell. It's not what you would normally recommend, but go for it. And let's see, we have, of course, the Kavanaugh pick. You can be almost sure that that's the first thing they're going to vote on when they come back after recess. And he is going to pass. I said before, he'll probably get 53, 54 votes. I don't think it'll be a nail biter. I don't think they'll have to fight and beg for the 51st vote or anything like that. I don't think they'll need to, because I think Kavanaugh there's no real reason you can oppose him. He's not particularly radical on anything. And you've got Joe Manchin, Joe Donnelly, and Heidi Heitkamp, who are in a very difficult position. I think at least 2 of those 3 Democrats, Manchin, Donnelly, and Heitkamp, 2 of those 3 I think will flip. Maybe all 3. You have Collins and Murkowski, the 2 liberal Republican women who always play this game, but I think even they will probably vote for the pick because they have issues too. And you don't want to screw the president on a Supreme Court justice, because the president can screw you back. It's just simple politics, and they know Trump's the guy who will do that. He will never forget it. If Collins and Murkowski do not support his pick for Supreme Court, he will not forget it. And the next time they need something, forget about it. Here's some really good news. 4,200 Republicans were polled on who they would like to see as the next speaker if the Republicans retain the House. Of course, the next man up is Kevin McCarthy. He's the guy that Paul Big Ears Ryan is going to try to slide into that position. It's kind of how it works. He's the next man up. He's the next guy that would normally be in that position. But it happens by a vote. Normally, the previous speaker, the outgoing speaker, will bust the knuckles of the people he has to bust. The establishment will get busy. The lobbyists will get busy. Everyone will get busy, and they'll get the votes to get the next deep state swamper in that position. But in this poll by Republicans, 4,200 Republicans polled, 99.2% want Jim Jordan. Only 0.08 want Kevin McCarthy. 99.2 to 0.08. That's unbelievable. And that's good news. It'll be interesting to see if the numbers of members in the House, Republican members in the House, because the Democrats are not, obviously the Democrats, if they had to vote for anybody, it would be McCarthy. But it'll be interesting to see how many Republicans pay attention to this poll and feel the pressure, and how much pressure will be brought by people on their member of Congress to support Jordan for Speaker of the House over McCarthy. When that vote gets ready to happen, we need to be working the phones. Okay, that's all I got time for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more Towergate. Thanks for tuning in. See ya. Bye.